right, well, first of all, good morning, everybody. It's a true pleasure to be here today. I spent my whole entire life in manufacturing. I did start out as a third shift maintenance supervisor working on the factory floor 7 days a week, 16, 20 hours a day. It was an incredible learning experience, from metal stamping to hydroforming to general assembly to e-coating, all the different core processes that we all see, all of us in this room see on a daily basis. As my career progressed in manufacturing, one thing that I really came to appreciate is what you all feel every single day of your life, running the businesses and being part of the businesses that you're a part of in the coating and finishing space, and that is the ever-changing dynamic of production schedules. I just most recently came out of industrial automation and worked with powder coaters and finishers every day of my life, and often when you'd go and speak with the suppliers, and we have one here, Rob, he supplies my former factory in New Baltimore, Michigan, and he'll tell you that the folks that are at the very end of the dog's tail are the coaters and the finishers. And as our customers are dropping in urgent requests, and as our engineering team is trying to urgently get things released to the floor, and as the procurement team is trying to purchase direct material and the details, we're trying to get them through the fab side to get them out to the coating and finishing shops, we politely get on bended knee and we call Rob on Friday at 6 o'clock and say, Rob, I know I called you last Friday at 6 o'clock. Can you please have people work tomorrow, Saturday, and help us get these parts that we need by Monday morning on our factory floor? And Rob politely says, no problem, Andy, I'd be happy to help you with that. So it's a challenging business, and I tip my hat to all of you. And again, as Jeff mentioned, look forward to what will be a really nice couple of days, learning from each other and sharing best practices. What I wanted to talk about this morning, I thought it'd be really helpful to give many of the folks in the audience a perspective of how the industrial world is changing. It's changing at light speed. I mean, faster, I think, than in the history of the world. There's so much change that's happening today that many people in the mainstream just have no visibility to. I thought it would be helpful to just talk through and give some real examples that most people can relate to help you understand why data is such a critical part of our current state manufacturing ecosystem and the future, and how it will really shape the future as we go forward. Just a quick summary of items that I thought we could go through today. What is your data needs a state? And I'll talk a little bit about what that means when I get to the next slide. What is the current state of manufacturing in the United States? We're in an election year. For those of you that have lived through national elections, presidential elections, it's crazy in manufacturing. I mean, customers, there's a lot of uncertainty, don't know how our global and national policy is going to impact the manufacturers. And so what happens? A lot of the big industrial companies start to pull back on their capital spending, and it creates uncertainty across all the end markets that we serve. And so everyone's anxiously awaiting what's going to happen in November. Moore's Law, for those of you that work in the semiconductor space and have followed Intel and AMD and a lot of the big chip manufacturers, and what's happened with NVIDIA and artificial intelligence. Front page of the Wall Street Journal yesterday morning is Intel's on the verge of getting acquired. One of the most storied chip manufacturers in the history of the world is crumbling, struggling, and on the verge of getting gobbled up. And you ask yourself, how could a company that was so revered and so respected and such an innovator, how could they ever possibly get to a state today where they're on the verge of getting acquired? And so we'll just talk about that for a quick minute. $200 billion of ad revenue. I have arguments in the living room of my home with my son. He runs a landscaping business. And I talked to him about Steelhead type ERP, MRP based solutions. The need to have a real accountant, to have an income statement, a balance sheet, understand how you're making money, how you're losing money, who are the good customers, who are the bad customers, how you track your payables and your receivables. And he looks at me with glossy eyes and he thinks I'm crazy. For all of you that are in the audience today, as you're thinking of ways to grow your business, how many of you are actually stepping back and assessing how you can improve the revenue streams that you have flowing into your company, the way that Google and Amazon do today. I have very, very close friends who I graduated from MIT with, and by the way, I don't say that nose in the air. I grew up in a very, very small town in the Upper Peninsula, Michigan, where the median income is about $27,000 a year. I say in the context of very close personal friends of mine work at Amazon. And we're there in the very early innings with Jeff Bezos and Jeff Wilke. And there was, with intentionality, a focus on how they can build an ecosystem that's data-driven, that will allow them to build intelligence into their platform that no one else on the face of the earth will ultimately be able to replicate. So when you're taking your mouse and you're scrolling over the Head & Shoulders shampoo and scrolling down to Suave, they actually can track and identify with predictive intelligence in a region like Metro Detroit, where we're sitting today, the volume of Head & Shoulders shampoo that they will sell from the distribution center that's at the Romulus Airport, based on the intensity of people hovering over different product types and different SKUs. Now, do all of you have to take your data intelligence to that level of intensity? Probably not. But my question to you is, what are you doing today in your business to embrace data, to use data, and to empower your teams to use data? Boeing. Has anyone been following Boeing? How's Boeing doing? Not well. Why are they not doing well? Quality? Yeah. What else? Where's Boeing's headquarters? Seattle? DC? Any other takers? St. Louis. Who said Chicago? Chicago, Illinois. Who ever thought Boeing, whose largest manufacturing base was in Seattle, Washington, would set up headquarters in Chicago, Illinois? We'll look at that in a minute. Technology that will shape the future. We all hear about artificial intelligence, and a lot of folks, I'm sure, in this room ask, how in the world can I, as a 15 or 20 person job shop, embrace artificial intelligence, and how can it help me and help shape the future of my business? Well, I'll give you one quick, simple example before we dive in here. I met with a job shop owner who uses Steelhead last week, 10 total employees. He's based about 15 miles south of where we're sitting. I was asking him about employment and how he does his hiring and how he develops his team. And he said, Andy, I sit down with the leader of my human resources team, and I tell that person, if they spend more than 20 minutes writing a job description, they're going to get fired. I said, well, why is that? He said, all you need to do is go into ChatGPT, type job description for this industry, put these keywords in, and in 10 minutes, I have the best job description that will exist on the internet. Why aren't more people using artificial intelligence to help improve their business? I said, good question. So I'll answer that question as we get into this. The S-curve, innovation. Does everybody know what an S-curve is as it relates to innovation and change? Different levels of adoption. You think of an iPhone back when we first started, when Steve Jobs introduced the iPhone with the little knob for music. Remember that? It was just music. And then all of a sudden we had smartphones. And then all of a sudden the whole world had smartphones. There's a thing called an S-curve, which we'll talk about because it's very important to the environments that you lead in as it relates to Steelhead and new technology. And then last but not least, fortune, it still does favor the bold. Okay, so your data needs a state. We're here today. Steelhead has brought all of us together. Steelhead is a platform that is based off of taking data, organizing data, putting data into a form that helps you make more informed decisions. As you think about data, how are all of you using data today? This is from a recent conference. The head of Azure, which is Microsoft's artificial intelligence tool, said the following: every customer recognizes that AI is transformative for their business, and they also recognize that their data needs a state, needs to be in shape to be able to leverage all of the power of artificial intelligence, because the best artificial intelligence models, if you put garbage in, most likely you're going to get garbage out. So it's become critically important for customers to get their data state ready for AI. In June, I ended a tenure where I was running an industrial automation company, and we wished we had a solution like Steelhead at our business. We had a homegrown, internally developed ERP, MRP system. It was good, but it was on-prem type solution versus in the cloud. But the number one challenge that I had as the leader of the company was getting people to use the system, to put data into the system that would allow us to get good data out of the system to make informed decisions. And as it relates to artificial intelligence, if employees in your place of employment aren't taking the time to clock direct labor so you can track direct labor, charge direct material appropriately to jobs so you can track how that direct material is affecting your margin, it doesn't matter what type of system you invest in, your ability to use the system to make more informed decisions will really, really struggle. And I think it's a pitfall that a lot of small manufacturers fall into. So, Andy, you talk about the industrial world. Sounds like you're a little bit of a nerd. You went to MIT. Do you really truly understand what life is like in the real world? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what I walked into on day number 1 in my job back in 2015 in a 37-person job shop in Lansing, Michigan. This was the hub of our world-class IT system. This was a very highly revered employee-owned and operated soda process where we had pop in a pop machine. And the day that I suggested we get these cans out of this janitor's closet was the day that you would have thought the building was going to blow up, because everyone was so attached to getting the 50-cent cans of pop that were subsidized by the company out of the pop machine that was in the middle of the factory floor. Can anyone see in the front row here what that sign says on that barrel? Hazardous waste. You all work in the coating and finishing space. What happens when flammable paint coating gets near heat? Has a potential to catch on fire? Good thing we have all kinds of wooden mixing sticks and straps on top of hazardous waste. The far right, driving culture change and getting employees, their behavior to change. See these vehicles? I have a question for all of you highly accomplished manufacturing professionals. Why are these trucks inside of the building? I don't know either. So let me ask you this. We don't know why they're in the building. How do we get them out of the building? We have to drive them out of the building. So pretend this is a factory, which it is, and it's 6 o'clock, 5:45 a.m. And we work 6 days a week, sometimes 7, 12 months a year. I have employees backing trucks out of a factory one at a time, and then at the end of the day, driving them in one at a time, every day. So on day number 1, the question is, why do we have people bringing trucks in and out of the building? Well, that's what we've done for 30 years. Okay, you get them out of the building. What is all this stuff on the floor? Water. And this is polished concrete. I have another question. What is the #1 OSHA recordable type of injury in the United States of America? Slip and fall injuries. You think we could stop spending money having people pull trucks, 4 trucks in and out of a building every day, and eliminate the potential to have water on the floor? Culture is so strong in small job shop environments. As we think about driving change from this to a Steelhead-based, data-driven, disciplined culture, all of you will ultimately need to take a very active role in changing the behavior of your employees, and I'm sure you recognize that. Work instructions. Would it be nice to have standard work and have a standard process in your factory? This, ladies and gentlemen, was my first foray into 6S, and you can see sample work instructions and job descriptions for shop personnel. There they are. Terrible, right? So we start talking about getting the place organized and clean, building system and process and standard work. United States manufacturing. Where are we at? Number of firms. In 2021, there were 238,851 firms in the manufacturing sector. All but 3,920 are considered to be small, which means they have fewer than 500 employees. Number of workers, manufacturing employment fell in the month of August. This is from North American Association of Manufacturers. Losing 24,000 employees from July, but remains above pre-pandemic levels. Output, manufacturing value-added output decreased from 2.8 trillion in Q4 of 2023, which was an all-time high, to 2.8 trillion in the first quarter of 2024. When you look at trade and how our manufacturers are trading with the rest of the world trade in manufactured goods rose from 14.8 trillion in 2021 to 15.2 trillion in 2022. Interestingly, if you look, the figure has risen from 4.6 trillion in 2000. So again, 4.6 trillion in the year 2000, 14.8 trillion in 2021, and 15.2 trillion in 2022. How's the United States manufacturing? Strong, right? Very, very strong. When you compare us versus the rest of the world, manufacturing in the United States would be the 7th largest economy in the world, the whole world. The economy being a country, right? 7th largest country in the world. With 2.6 trillion in value added from manufacturing in 2022, only 6 nations would rank higher in terms of GDP. And to give you some examples, those other nations with higher GDP in 2022 were in order of size: United States, China, Japan, Germany, India, and the United Kingdom. After manufacturing in the US, which would be 6, the next 5 countries, just to give you some perspective of how big manufacturing is: France, Russia, Canada, Italy, and Brazil. So our manufacturing base in the United States is very strong. 10 years from now, over the next decade, when you think of opportunity for all of you, 3.8 manufacturing jobs will likely be needed. When you look at the detail, 1.9 million are expected to be unfilled if we do not inspire more people to pursue modern manufacturing careers. Of open jobs, 2.8 million will come from retirement, 2.8 million, and 760,000 from industry growth. Okay, we talked about Moore's Law and Intel and some of the things that are happening in the chip space. I'm sure everyone's heard of NVIDIA. Yes? See a lot of people nodding their heads. Accelerated computing is needed to tackle the most impactful opportunities of our time. When you think of artificial intelligence, just take a look. This is a single-threaded CPU. The performance, right? 1.5 times performance improvement per year. And as you come up the curve, you can see 1.1 times it starts to flatten out. Look at the just step change that you see as a result of the innovation that NVIDIA is releasing into the industrial world. It's staggering, absolutely staggering. Okay, Amazon. What is it about Amazon that's relevant to what we're discussing today? Data. If you look in the left-hand side here and you look at this chart in the upper left-hand corner, a huge challenge that many of you have as job shop owners is return on investment. How do I find the time to focus on anything that is but getting parts out the door of my shop, employing people? Look at Amazon's, if you look, this is their net income. Look at Amazon's net income over the last 15 to 20 years. There was a significant period where they didn't report much, if any, net income. And they put a lot of focus on investing in their business. And a big source of investment was in the data intelligence that they built into their landing page. So as I mentioned earlier, when you're focused on different SKU types and you're huddling over a particular SKU with your mouse, they can actually use predictive analytics to help inform their distribution centers on the probability of someone pulling the trigger, clicking a button, and purchasing a particular SKU. When you look at the volume of people that are going to their landing page each day and the transactions that are resulting from it, all of a sudden, as you start to build that center of expertise and you become the market leader, it creates an opportunity for additional revenue streams. Has anyone seen or experienced different revenue streams from Amazon? I mean, as we all use Amazon in our daily life.
We started an e-commerce site, and so we're actually buying and selling product to customers through Amazon, basically.
As you think of artificial intelligence, do any of you use artificial intelligence in your daily business today, in any capacity?
We started using AI to dissect all of our incidents.
In a prior life, when I was working on data collection in my prior job, we would build anywhere from 600 to 900 custom tools, lift assist and secure tools for John Deere, Case New Holland, General Motors, Ford, Chrysler, all the big industrial companies, med device companies. And there would be hundreds and hundreds of individual details that would go into a specific tool. And all of them would have to get powder coated or finished in some form or fashion. To track all the different incidences and to track where all those individual details are going, coming and going, the cost. Many people don't appreciate that it's not just for the daily execution, but it's also for competitive bidding. when we would get into environments, and I don't know how many of you are actually in competitive bid environments versus having direct relationships that span decades where a customer trusts you to say, we've been doing business for 30 years, and they just source you the work versus make you bid on it. We had to bid on everything that we won. And so with our internal system, we had the ability down to a detail level to look at how many hours did the welder scan onto this particular tool? How much time was spent in machining? How much time did it spend in finishing and coating? How much time did it spend in assembly? What was the direct material as a percent of total revenue? What was the direct labor as a percent of total revenue? How have our margins trended from plant to plant within a particular customer logo? All of that came from getting your employees, training your employees to be disciplined, to put the data into the system so you can get out of it all of the value that helps you be a much more well-rounded business professional. Boeing. Years ago when I worked in industrial engineering as a manufacturing engineering manager, I would take teams of people out to Renton and Everett, Washington, Boeing's factories out in Washington State. Outside of the airfare, Boeing will allow you into the Everett and Renton facilities for free. You don't have to pay anything other than the airfare. And they have very, very detailed tours of how they develop their moving line in Renton and how they build all their wide-body jets, a 787 in Everett. And so I've probably taken 12 trips with direct reports out to Washington to help people learn what standard working process is all about. The barge, did you see the barge where they kit all their direct material and they bring the barge out, direct material out to their mechanics on the floor underneath the planes, all segregated based on all the work instructions they have? How did Boeing lose their way? They were one of the most revered American manufacturing companies and one of the most revered companies in the world. What happened to Boeing? Well, if you look back at the history of Boeing, there were a number of cascading decisions that really contributed to their downfall and what they're really struggling with today. One begins with leadership. So, and if any of you ever heard of the name Alan Mulally? Alan Mulally was the head of commercial airplanes for Boeing, who was passed over as CEO. He left to become the CEO of Ford Motor Company. Any of you remember hearing about when Ford leveraged their the blue oval and got $22 billion from the markets to fund their turnaround? That was Alan Mulally. Came from Boeing, became the CEO of Ford, and the individual that they promoted at Boeing made a decision to move their corporate office from Seattle to Chicago. You can actually see it when you go through downtown Chicago on I-94. That separated all the senior leadership of the company from their main factory base out on the West Coast. And it really created a situation where there was a wedge driven between their senior leadership and their employees. On top of that, they decided to outsource all their non-core production processes. So what do you think might be non-core on an airplane? Do you think the fuselage that everybody sits in, is that non-core? I wouldn't think so. Boeing decided it was non-core. They spun off Spirit AeroSystems. Spirit AeroSystems became a private, publicly traded company. And ultimately, they took all the major sections of their plane and outsourced them. And they wanted to just be the integrator that put the pieces together. What happens when you do that as a manufacturer? You all know that in this room because of the work that you do as a powder coating and finishing experts. You lose control over everything. Lose complete control over it. And now you have this huge, complex global supply chain that you're trying to actively manage and ultimately bring all these parts. Does anyone know how many parts are on an airplane, on a Boeing 737? 2 million parts on a 737. Trying to pull all these parts together. Oh, by the way, you got rid of all of your legacy employees during COVID and told all the legacy long-term senior tenured people to go away. Now you have young people who've never built planes before. You have a leadership that's in Chicago. Your biggest factories are on the West Coast. And on top of that, you have planes that are falling out of the sky. I'm not trying to oversimplify and compare Boeing to what all of you do on a day-to-day basis. But I will share the following. Boeing's struggles and issues from friends who work at Boeing and are tasked with fixing these problems stem from the same challenges that all of you face every day in your job. If you read any of the press, any of the public press about what happened with Boeing in the Alaska Airlines flight where the door plug blew out? When they went back to do, the FAA went in to do their investigation, what did the FAA discover? They had no record of putting the plug onto the fuselage, the body of the plane. There's no record that existed. Why didn't the record exist? Because the employees who were tasked with performing the repair didn't put the record into the system that they used to track and be able to recollect when an FAA comes in to pull up a data record. They didn't put it into the system. They lacked the discipline at the factory floor level to adhere to and use the system. And I will tell you, in the day-to-day world that you live in, running powder coating and fabricating job shops, if your employees don't have the discipline to put their direct labor into a system that you can track on a product-by-product, customer-by-customer basis, it will make your job 10 times more difficult than if you invest the time and the energy to train, to develop, to coach the people around you to use the system, to ultimately then to be able to have data and intelligence that you can put out of it. I encourage all of you to get to know each other, get to know the Steelhead team. Feel free to ask lots of questions and learn about ChatGPT and artificial intelligence and Amazon and Google. How many are using Google search terms today? Anybody? If you aren't today using Google search terms to drive volume in your sales funnel, do me a favor, when you get home, Google powder coating, whatever city or town or area you live in, and see what pops up. And ask yourself, where are you on that list? Google search terms are, the cost of the search terms are a function of how in demand the terms are. You all know, I know that powder coating and finishing is a very, very fragmented industry. Very few of your direct competitors are using Google search terms. You should use them, if you're not using them today, to drive volume into your sales funnel, into your business, to help grow your businesses. So I mentioned, this is all factual data. So this is Amazon 2004, net income in US dollars. Look at Amazon's net income reported from 2004 to 2017. Many people just assume that Amazon shot to the moon. Amazon really didn't start making real money until 2017, 13 years after the data set on this chart started. The point there is they made very intentional investments in their business to scale and grow their business over the long term. Go-to sites when searching for products. We heard there's some folks in this room who use Amazon to sell. 56%, so these are consumers globally, 56% start on Amazon. 56. Across all generations, Amazon remains the most popular place to start when searching for a product online. Though Gen X, 56%, baby boomers, 67%, are the most likely to do so. YouTube is the most popular social media channel for product searches across all generations. If you're not using YouTube and creating content for YouTube, you're missing out. Here's the stats that I wanted to share with you. 2023, that's the most recent data I could get that's accurate. Obviously, we're in the middle of 2024. So this is market share. Amazon, 37.6%. Walmart, everybody thinks of Walmart as like they own the retail space. Amazon has 37.6% market share. Walmart has 6.4%. Apple, 3.6%. eBay, 3%, and Target, 1.9%. Some facts. Average daily sales revenue at Amazon today, $1.6 billion per day. 68% of Amazon sellers are third party. They're not Amazon, they're third party sellers that are on the platform, like all of you could be. In 2023, third party sellers in the United States sold more than 4.5 billion items on Amazon, or 8,600 items per minute. Amazon is one of the most visited websites in the world and fourth most popular in the US. Amazon gained over 1 billion additional visitors in the last year, and in June of 2024 attracted 3.25 billion visitors. Interesting note on the bottom, 53% of Amazon's website traffic comes from mobile devices. If you can't go on a mobile device and look at your own company's website and navigate it, fix that. Google, how many are using Google in this audience to drive sales in your business, just out of curiosity? 2.5 maybe, 3? 2024 market share, Google does have a monopoly on the market. They have 91% plus of market share. Bing only has, Microsoft 2.9%, and then Yahoo's 1.1%. There are an average 6.3 million Google searches per minute, 8.5 billion Google search queries completed per day. Google's autocomplete feature, listen to this, when you talk about technology, their autocomplete feature reduces typing by 25%, saving the world 200 years of typing per day. Google Shopping Graph has over 35 billion product listings. The top Google search terms have a 22.4% click-through rate. What is the click-through rate on your websites? How are you tracking that? 46% of all Google searches have local intent. 97 billion local searches are done each month. 63% of all Google search traffic comes from mobile devices as compared to what we just saw on Amazon. So just think about that, 63%. And there's billions of searches done per day. More than 20% of searches using the Google app are done using voice technology. 50% of the US population uses voice-enabled search daily. And as of September 2024, the most searched thing on Google is, from the front row, YouTube. My son spends hours every night on YouTube learning about how to do different techniques, landscaping, putting in patios and retaining walls. Learns it all on YouTube. It's an amazing tool. When I can't fix my lawnmower in the garage, YouTube. Step by step with videos and voiceover. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Randy.